Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to meeting number 4, Monday, March 28th, 7 o'clock. And we're going to start our council meeting. First, I'd like to invite everybody to stand if they are able, and we'll sing "O Canada." O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, a true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. And I believe, thank you. We'll go to the land acknowledgement statement. Oh, no, a couple notes. Due to the effort to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals and to comply with the province's state of emergency order, the council chambers are not open to the public to attend council meetings until further notice. Hopefully that's soon. As noted on this evening's agenda, any members of the public who wanted to provide comments could do so at the meeting under the request to address items in the agenda by contacting the clerk prior to 4:30 p.m. today, or by emailing their comments to the clerk by 4:30 p.m. today. Please note that any email comments submitted are considered to be public information and will be read into public record later in this agenda. And members of the public can watch this evening's council meeting by using the live stream link found on the township's website, as this meeting is being live streamed and is also being video recorded and will be posted on the township's website and can be viewed anytime following the meeting. The following land acknowledgement statement: the township of West Lincoln, being part of the Niagara region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The township of West Lincoln, as part of the regional municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Opening petition is by Harold Jonker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We gather together here today intent on doing good work. We seek to represent fairly and well all those who have given us this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, guided by understanding and wisdom. We seek to serve with respect for all. May our personal faith give us strength to act honestly and well in all matters before us.
Thank you, Councillor Jonker. Members of council, are there any changes in orders of items on the agenda? I see none. Madam Clerk, are there any members of council that have a disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest with respect to an item on this evening's agenda? Again, Madam Clerk, I see none. So I'm going to ask we have the opportunity to request for members to request to address items on the agenda. I'm going to go to the IT help. Is there any members wishing to or indicating that they wish to speak to an item on this evening's agenda as allowed by section 6.7 of the procedural bylaw?
Not seeing any, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. And Madam Clerk, were there any members of the public that had emailed comments prior to 4:30 today with respect to a specific item?
No, Mr. Mayor, there was not. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. And then we move on to appointments and presentations. And as we can all well see, we have several members of our police service with us this evening. We have Niagara Regional Police. I'm going to let them make their introductions. I believe we have Jen Lawson, I see, Brian McCullough, our Chief of Police, Brett Flynn, our Deputy Chief of Police. Let's see, we have, there's Marco Giannico, Superintendent of District Operations. We have, I think I saw an inspector. There he is. Patrick McCulley is the inspector. Sean Perron is staff sergeant for District 8. He's our guy. And we have Stephanie Sabrin, corporate communications. There, I went through it, so you don't have to introduce each other. Introduce yourselves further than that if you need to. So I'm going to yield the floor to whoever is going to lead out with this presentation. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'll lead off. Thanks so much for the opportunity to join you this evening to be able to share some insights into the Niagara Regional Police Service. I'll keep my my opening remarks brief before turning the presentation over to the District Commander for 8th District, who I'm sure you're all familiar with, Staff Sergeant Sean Perron. When we look at serving our community as a command team, we have three overarching guiding principles: assisting victims of crime, member wellness, and community engagement. Community engagement is critical to building positive relationships and an opportunity for us to hear directly from our community members as to what's occurring that we might not otherwise be aware of. As we see the continued lifting of COVID-19 restrictions, we're very much looking forward to being able to resume attending community events and connecting with members of the community that our members are so proud to serve and protect. With me today, as you already mentioned, Mr. Mayor, I'm joined with Deputy Chief of Operations Brett Flynn, Superintendent Marco Giannico, and 3 District Inspector Pat McCauley, as the District 8 falls under his command as well. And additionally, we're joined by board member Jen Lawson, who's one of the 3 provincial appointees to our Police Services Board. When I talk about the important role of district commanders, in this case, Sean Perron, who's the staff sergeant, I often refer to them as the local chief of police. As district commanders, they're able to connect with counselors, the CAO, members of the community, business owners, to hear directly from them about issues that are impacting the community. It also provides us with an opportunity for two-way dialogue and to hear directly from the district commander as to what the various enforcement efforts are that are taking place in a particular issue, on a particular issue that they may not otherwise be aware of. I would strongly encourage yourself, Mayor.
Yes.
Hey, Ron, thanks, Roberta.
Okay, thanks.
Counselors and the CAO to continue reaching out to and connecting with the district commander. And I'm more than confident that Sean will address a particular issue. Having said that, I will now turn over the presentation to Staff Sergeant Perron, but I'll be available should there be any questions following the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And at this point, I'd just like to interrupt by welcoming Councillor Mike Rayner. He's on the meeting now. Thank you. Go ahead, sir. There.
Thanks, Chief. Again, thank you, Your Worship, members of Council, for having us here today, for giving us this opportunity to speak. Simply put, here's our mission statement. The Niagara Regional Police Service is dedicated to serving and protecting the residents and visitors within the regional municipality of Niagara. In partnership with our community, we should provide quality policing services with integrity, diligence, and sensitivity. Next slide, please. As you're likely aware, senior command structure consists of our Chief of Police, Brian McCullough, supported by 2 Deputy Chiefs. Deputy Chief of Police Operations, Brett Flynn, and Deputy Chief for Police Support Services, Bill Forty. Next slide. Here's a quick overview of our current organizational structure. Much like many large organizations, it shows the scope of the services and areas of expertise within the Niagara Regional Police Service. From a uniform perspective, we have 774 sworn members as part of our authorized strength, from the Chief of Police, 2 deputies, 5 superintendents, 14 inspectors, 31 staff sergeants, 109 sergeants, and 599 constables. On the civilian side, we have 326 members consisting of 1 director, 12 managers, and 313 civilian support staff personnel. Next slide. Breaking down the organizational structure further, I wanted to give you a snapshot of the various police programs that we have here in Niagara, from executive services, district operations, which is our front line, as well as operational support services. Investigative services are resources above and beyond the number of specifically assigned patrol officers available to assist with more complex needs and investigations, such as our special victims unit, our domestic violence, child abuse unit, as well as our emergency services, including our canine, tactical officers, and traffic enforcement officers, just to name a few. Most members of the public only see the frontline uniform officer driving around within the community and answering calls for service. But at any time, these specialty units can be deployed to assist where appropriate for a tailored response. Next slide. Further, we have corporate services, technology services, and operational support in roles such as our 911 communications unit, our real-time operations center, and court services. Now, to demonstrate how all of these units can work together at any given point in time within our region, I'll use the example of a robbery with a firearm call, where a suspect may have fled on foot after committing a crime. The call to the police starts with our communications unit, where that 911 call is received, processed, and dispatched for a frontline response. Depending on the location of the robbery and the information available at the time, our real-time operations center will immediately look to access cameras available in the area. That frontline uniform response is the initial emergency response. Officers will attend the scene, secure it, tend to any victims, ensure public safety, and look to locate a suspect. Our canine unit and our emergency task unit would be activated due to the fact that the suspect had fled the area and there was mention of a firearm. Additional resources may be needed, and members of our traffic enforcement unit, for example, can be called upon to assist with the perimeter. District detectives or specialty detectives would be notified and would attend to investigate, interview, take statements, and conduct a canvass. Our forensic services unit would be called to process the scene and any evidence retrieved, and our corporate communications would be looped in to ensure the media releases are prepared and would respond to any immediate inquiries. When an arrest is made, the person responsible would be taken into custody and brought to our central holding facility, where they would be processed by police officers and special constables. So there's definitely a lot of areas of policing behind the scenes, not to mention our mechanics and staff in our fleet services, our IT personnel responsible for pretty much everything from phones to cameras to computers, our finance and human resource personnel, along with our career development, recruiting unit, and members of our training unit, all of which work to support our visible frontline response. Next slide. So looking at calls year over year, there's a consistent increase in calls for service. From 2020, we saw almost a 17% increase, which can partially be attributed to an initial dip in calls for service due to the pandemic, but also an overall increase in call volume. And it's important to note that beginning May 1st, 2021, the NRPS through the communications unit began using a new set of priority dispatch codes, which we've called priority 6 calls. These types of calls do not require a police dispatch and were added to our call taking process to track all incoming calls and better quantify the work being done. In 2021, there were 18,036 priority 6 calls across the region. So of those calls, minus the priority 6 calls, there were 130,306 incidents, resulting in a 3.27% increase in calls for service over 2020. And a 1.13% decrease from 2019, which was pre-COVID. Next slide. So if we look at statistical trends in West Lincoln, as you can see, the township of West Lincoln had a similar trend occur, and in 2021, when compared to 2020, we saw a 9.7% increase in calls for service, which was an increase of 158 calls. In 2021, the township of West Lincoln, there were 156 priority calls. So if you take away those added priority 6 calls, we saw a 0.1% increase in calls for service, which is essentially 2 calls over 2020, and a 4.7% decrease in calls for service when compared to 2019. Officers in West Lincoln or in 8th District in particular are responsible for patrolling over 619 square kilometers, which represents 33.4% of the region's square kilometer land space. And the township of West Lincoln is comprised of 387.72 square kilometers of the 8th District patrol territory. Next slide. So I provided data with respect to the number of mental health calls for service our officers attended in the township of West Lincoln. Between 2019 and 2021, there was a 12.5% increase in the number of mental health related calls for service. And again, in 2021, the service changed the way calls for service are categorized, which allowed us to better track the types of interactions our officers have when dealing with mental health related calls. For example, when an individual is or is not violent. This change has allowed us to better track our interactions and provide a more fulsome picture of the types of calls for service that our officers respond to. And it's also worth noting that these calls or these numbers are relatively low when compared to the rest of the region. At the present time, there's 27 officers in 8 districts that are trained in crisis intervention training. This training requires officers to complete a 40-hour training program in which they are taught various methods to safely de-escalate situations involving individuals in a mental health crisis. In addition to our CIT training, officers in 8 districts can speak with members of a mobile crisis rapid response team working in St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and soon Welland, who can provide them with additional resources on how to deal with an individual in crisis. Across the entire region in 2021, the Mobile Crisis Rapid Response Program diverted 71% of all mental health related calls, which totaled over 1,000 occurrences where an individual did not go directly to hospital. Next slide. So looking at general occurrences, break and enters, motor vehicle thefts, in the township of West Lincoln, when reviewing common criminal investigations, there was a 22% decrease in break and enters between 2019 and 2021. There was a 6.3% decrease in motor vehicle thefts between 2019 and 2021. However, there was a 121% increase in theft from autos between 2019 and 2021. Now, to put that in perspective, that's 23 incidents. So while it sounds like a big percentage, it was 23 additional incidents in that 2-year period, which our officers are regularly try and proactively combat through programs such as our Lock It or Lose It campaign. And with the help of our corporate communications unit, we have the hashtag 9 p.m. routine. And it's a tweet that members of our communications unit, our corporate communications unit, will put out from the service, reminding residents to at 9 p.m. to make a conscientious effort to ensure their valuables are removed from their vehicles and their vehicles are locked every night, to try to get people into a routine to make sure they're doing that at 9 p.m. so it becomes a bit of a habit for them. And with respect to robberies between 2020 and 21, we went from 0 to 1 robbery. And again, it's worth highlighting that these are actually relatively low numbers compared to the region. And next slide, please. Officers assigned to 8 district take part in several crime prevention and community engagement initiatives throughout the year. And in the township itself, officers regularly take part in, as I mentioned, our Lock It or Lose It campaign all year long. And in warmer months, initiatives such as Operation Safe Play, which involves them conducting park and premise checks throughout the course of their night shifts in an effort to discourage disruptive loitering and vandalism in parks within the township. Recognizing that a number of issues reported by residents involve truck and traffic related matters, officers in 8 district conduct at least 3 yearly truck safety blitzes with our law enforcement partners around the Golden Horseshoe. And the work of our officers is regularly highlighted on our district Twitter account at 8NRPS, which has over 1,100 followers, the most of any district within the region. And with that said, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Sean, for that update. I'm sure there are a few questions. It's usually a vigorous discussion that follows. So I'm going to go to any members of council wishing to ask any questions. Okay, Councillor Jonker. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the increase there on page 7 with the calls, but I think you explained it kind of well, how the difference of calls are being tracked. And I think that's good to hear that we're always trying to stay on top of why and what and stuff like that. So from, if I understand correctly on page 7, that was a big high increase, but it's because of how you've tracked numbers, phone calls differently. I'm correct in that, right? I just want to kind of.
Sorry, page 7 is referring to. I'm just making sure we're on the same slide.
Yeah, the NRPS calls for service, right? Okay. So we went from 126. Yeah. So, and you said something about because you track now some calls that you don't actually send people out on, right?
That's correct.
And I just wanted to clarify that,
That's correct. So sometimes they may just,
if I heard that correct.
Yep, the priority 6 calls may be calls where it doesn't necessarily require a frontline mobile response. So it can be an issue that can be resolved through our communications unit without necessarily having an officer there. So it's just capturing the total, a real, like I said, fulsome picture of what comes into our communications unit and what our communicators are also dealing with. And it sometimes may not be a call that requires a frontline response.
Yeah, like my service is kind of in it. My service is kind of in and out here. So, but I think if you look at 2019, 2020, in 2021 is when you started tracking those different calls, right?
Correct. I believe it was May 1st, 2021.
Perfect.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that a little bit.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
wanted,
Okay. Then I'm going to go
would
to.
just like to say on just thanks for everything that the police services do here. They do a great job. We got a big area here, and I think some of us understand that. And yet, there's always challenges as that as well. So we just appreciate the work that the Niagara Police do here. We get to see them quite often at the intersection by our company and staff there. So job well done.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'm going to move on to Councillor, Regional Councillor Witteveen. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to Sean, it's just a comment. I've emailed Sean a few times about concerns and copied the mayor on them. And I just want to thank you for your open door policy and, addressing some issues at St. Martin's while it was waiting to be demolished and some with our new a pedestrian crossing there at Wade, that you responded quickly and most of the things people are looking for is safety in our community, and thank you for having that that quick response and that open door policy. That's very very helpful for the mayor and myself as constituents, and also councillors bring up those concerns, and we truly appreciate that, Staff Sergeant.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Great. Thank you, Councillor, for that. Anybody from the gallery? No. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Riley. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, just to echo everyone else, thank you for attending tonight and making the presentation. It's nice to kind of see something than just hear it. The visual presentation really helps kind of illustrate the difference, especially, as Councillor Yonkers poking at there as far as the call volume. It's nice to actually see that and understand that fully. So, Mr. Mayor, my question through you to the Staff Sergeant is, as we notice here, as auto thefts are on the rise in our community and substantially, where I live, I've had like 2 that happen within the course of like basically a week and a half of each other. And I don't know how much, I'm sure the police services, with their intel are well aware of how the communities rally behind. And one of the Facebook groups I'm a part of happens to be like our local community and in our local neighborhood. And so we're always seeing and reading reports of suspicious vehicles. But my question to you, Mr. Mayor, is what is the police service doing in terms of preventing the AM theft? So we're having a lot of residents who are very nervous to get in their vehicle in the morning, and whether they use their auto start or whatever, they're expecting or worrying that someone's hiding around the corner. And so I think we've definitely seen an increase in police presence in our community, but I think I can speak on behalf of the community, the feeling that we don't have enough. And I realize you guys are limited with staffing and everything else. That just happens to be where we're located, I think. But the concern is AM thefts or automotive thefts. So I just kind of wanted to know from you, Mr. Mayor, the Staff Sergeant, what kind of action are you guys taking to kind of ensure that our community is safe in the morning for our residents?
Well, that's a good question. Thank you very much. Especially we find in the colder months, people want to warm up their car, or they're going to go into a store first thing in the morning and keep their car running, thinking it's going to stay nice and warm for them. So we actively try to promote on social media through our corporate communications unit. I understand you want to get into a nice warm car. We all do in the morning, especially when it's minus 18 out like it is right now. But it's just not a good practice to get into, to start your vehicle, leave the key in the ignition, and leave the vehicle unoccupied and unlocked. So that's why if you do have a remote start, Most of them come with a safety feature, so the minute the brake is touched, it'll automatically turn off if the keys aren't in the vehicle itself. So we try to promote that on social media. Don't leave your vehicle unattended. It might be tempting in this cold weather we experience, but it's not an advisable strategy for most people.
Thank you. Yeah, and even to elaborate a bit on that, like we have residents, I had one resident mention to me that their car was in their garage door was open, and they were warming up thinking it was safe there, and someone actually, was making their way into the vehicle. So again, like these individuals are pretty bold, and they're obviously fearless. And so I think, the commenting always comes back to, where are the police? You're not around when you need them. And, obviously you guys can't be everywhere. We understand that. I guess the other couple questions I had was, we heard you mention, the numbers are relatively low compared to the rest of the region. And we realized population-wise, we're pretty small and kind of, population density. But I'm just kind of curious, how do we compare? I don't know if you have those specifics there in percentages, but just kind of, if I'm not looking to compare, say, to Niagara Falls or St. Catharines, but even just to some of our local area municipalities between Wainfleet, Grimsby, and Lincoln and Pelham, where do we compare with those? Do you have it by chance, Mr. Mayor, to any of the I guess the policing staff that we have here tonight? Do we have any specifics on where we rank among all the rest of the municipalities nearby us?
I think I had done a presentation for Lincoln Town Council a couple weeks ago, and it's relatively the same. And when I say the numbers are relatively low, it's, well, you can look at the percentage of 121%, and that sounds like a big number. When you break it down over the course of 2 years, that's 23 incidents. So for all intents and purposes, that could have been over the course of 2 nights in 2 years where people leave their car unlocked. And the biggest thing that's what we try to get across is 99.9% of the time, someone is not smashing your car window or prying your door open. If you leave valuables in your car in plain view, that's just almost asking for someone to take some kind of action to try to take it if it's desirable to them. So we recommend, that's why we do the 9 p.m. routine, and we do the Lock It or Lose It campaign, where keep things out of sight and lock your doors, because 99% of the time, they're not just going to randomly smash a window in the middle of the night and rifle through for a spare change or that wallet that is somewhere hidden in the car. So we try to do proactive crime prevention efforts such as that.
Appreciate that. Another follow-up, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to poke on response time. I've heard from members of the community very concerned with the response time. And I think part of our issues were about 12 to 15 minutes away from even just the District 8 alone, and never mind where an officer may be among the entire region. And I know there's, I don't know if it's so much staffing shortages, but I know there's been some nights where you guys haven't had a full force on. Maybe that's just due to how scheduling works. So I have 2 questions, which is one, trying to figure out what the current response time is for our community should someone be in crisis or some kind of situation come up. And the second part of that question is trying to follow up on where we're at. I know about 2 years ago, we met with you guys, and there was about 2 weeks after you guys met with us, you announced that unprecedented hiring of 40, I think it was about 42 or 44 candidates. And I was kind of curious where you guys are at with that and how much of that you've been able to fill to help fill some of the gaps that all of the region, I realize West Lincoln isn't alone in this. So I'm just kind of curious, where you guys are at with the hiring aspect of future prospect police officers.
Well, first I can answer the first part of that question, and I'll start answering the second half. But with respect to response times, there's margins that we have to meet in various areas, and within West Lincoln for priority response times in smaller municipalities, it's 10 minutes for a priority call. And we are well within that range, and the majority of the time we're well ahead of it, not even at the 10-minute mark. And with that said, however, given the nature of our work, it's unpredictable at times. So there may be the odd time where we are not within that 10 minutes, given the call volume at a particular time where officers tied up. But we do make a conscientious effort through our communications unit. We have patrol supervisors and our duty officer that ensures that resources are in place throughout the region 24 hours a day to respond to those incidents. And with respect to the hiring of those extra officers, I believe in the last presentation, we have just completed that. And those officers, that last group of 40 is just finishing their coaching period right now with their coach officer. And pretty soon they'll be on the road on their own to respond to calls for service on their own.
That's excellent. And so my last question, Mr. Mayor, through you, back to staff. Yeah, well, we'll see. I always have questions. I'm never afraid to ask. But right now, my current last question is, and I don't know if you'd have this statistic, so sorry to kind of throw this at you, but I'm just kind of curious in a 24-hour clock, how frequently can we expect to have at least one cruise police officer in our community among your entire service there throughout the whole region? Like, do you have a statistic that indicates that, every, I don't know how it works out on an overall average, but I'm just kind of wondering in terms of peace of mind for the community, like how frequently we actually have patrol officers in our community. Like, it's great that and I want to say this first, I love what you guys do with social media and how much you interact and engage with the community. It's certainly what we need. And from the last presentation, we learned that there's other channels to be able to report, whether you have speeding issues and traffic issues. But the problem we have now still is that lack of police presence. So I think, for the sake of the community, it'd be worth asking if you have that stat of how frequently a police officer actually patrols our area within a 24-hour span.
Unfortunately, I don't have that right now, but I could look into that for you and see if I could obtain that.
Okay, that would be very much appreciated. I don't know if any other your colleagues here would have that specific, but or statistics. Sorry, but again, it wasn't just directed at the staff sergeant. Sorry if you feel like I'm just asking you. It's just you're just right there. But if anybody else has a piece of information to add, feel free. But so, Mr. Mayor, that's all I have for now until the next idea pops in my head.
Okay, all right, I'll take your word for it. Okay, thank you. I do have Councillor Trombetta gave me a nod.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everybody, from the members of the Niagara Regional Police for attending this evening. A lot of questions do come, especially as a rural council. Obviously, when the weather starts changing, all the nice cars come out, and obviously, our rural roads get inundated with massive speeding. Myself as a rural council and others, there's another 3 also that are rural councils, we always get these phone calls and we try to direct the residents in the proper place. They always come to us as council to lower our speed limits, but obviously those are not easy to be done because obviously we have to follow a matrix system to lower speeds in certain areas. What can we really tell our residents upon the speeding, especially in the early hours of the morning? Especially on those Sundays when people like to take their families for a walk, that we don't have sidewalks, that they like to walk on the road and stuff like that. Where can we tell our residents? Because I see that your presentation, I don't know if it didn't show, but it showed break and entering, theft of motor vehicles, auto robbery, but it didn't really touch on traffic too much and those incidents that we do have in our rural areas. So do they refer to Twitter or do they just go to their, because what's happening with us is everybody's referring to a Facebook rant and rave, and that's where we're getting bombarded as councillors. And we need help in mitigating these situations because it comes down hard on the councillors when someone turns to Facebook rant and rave or news and views like all the sites are. So what can we do to ensure to the residents that we are getting the services and the, I guess, the patrolling that we need for our rural roads? Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe to Staff Sergeant or to Chief McCullough, whatever is available.
I can take that. Thanks for your question. We are aware of it. We're aware of the exotic cars that come up in the warmer months. Our officers are aware of that. We've had officers go and meet with some of the organizers ahead of time and explain or remind them of the rules of the road. We've had officers that are working out in the West Lincoln area. I'm sure there's a typical routes they'll take out in West Lincoln, so our officers position themselves along those roads when they know it's going to be one of those nice days where they anticipate those kind of cars on those roads. But to your question is how they can report it. They can call 8 District directly. We've had members of the community do that. They can call our traffic hotline, which is on our website. If you go to nrps.com, they can report it there, and there's a number you can call and leave a message on our traffic hotline. And we recently expanded the size of our traffic enforcement unit, added more officers to it. So I did not touch on the traffic point, but I do have some stats for you. In 2021, our officers issued over 1,000 provincial offense notices in the township of West Lincoln, and 668 of those were for speeding offenses. So our officers are aware of the issue out there, and they actively work to address it. We have an officer, an administration constable assigned to 8th District that is a LiDAR and radar qualified instructor, and she regularly qualifies and recertifies all our officers on radar and speed enforcement devices. Every one of our cruisers in Grimsby, or it's not Grimsby, 8th District itself, has mobile patrol radar mounts on the dash. So if an officer is going to, let's say, a barking dog complaint and they're driving up a regional or rural road out in West Lincoln, if the car's coming towards them at a high rate of speed, the officer can, while going to that call, pick that car up on radar and most often make a U-turn and go after the offender and either warn them or issue them a provincial offense notice. So there's a number of steps we are taking. We're aware of the issue and we're actively addressing it.
Okay.
Sorry, perfect. Thank you for that. Just need that information. Obviously, that will be helpful to our residents and hopefully mitigate some of the calls coming our way in the springtime. But thank you for your presentation, everyone. Much appreciated.
Okay, I see our Deputy Chief of Police put his hand up, so he has a question for the Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my apologies, I don't want to extend the time. Sean's great at thinking on his feet and coming up with the appropriate answers. But I just wanted to let you know on the one piece that Sean let you know about if people go on our website, just look under traffic complaints. It is actually extension 5555. So it's a 102 and then 5555. The online form is also there, and it's just a simple click, and somebody can actually go on and type their concern, whether it's about an actual location, like the councillor asked for, or asked about, if it's a specific roadway, or if it's a person they know is actually committing some sort of infractions out there, they can register it under that as well, that we can follow up on. So thanks for that, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. And Councillor Rayner, yeah, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight. Back many years ago when I started in councils in the early 2003, 2004, we used to have the staff sergeant come every quarter to the township and basically just update us on what's going on. It's been a long time since we had this, and it's nice that we've got everybody here tonight, although we've got certainly a lot more higher level than we've ever had before, but it's certainly nice to have them all here. I have a few questions through the mayor to Sean. Number one, 23 car thefts you said last year?
No, sorry, 23 theft from autos, not theft of autos.
What about theft of autos? How many were they?
Theft of autos were 30 in 2021.
And what is the percentage of recovery from that? What on average?
I don't have that available right now. And I couldn't even guess at this point.
Is there a good possibility lots of times that people do get their cars back, or most of the time they're gone to a chop shop?
I could find you that information, but at this point it'd just be pure speculation on my part.
Okay, thank you. The other thing was years ago, when they made the presentations, we only had one cruiser for the whole township of West Lincoln, which is the largest municipality of the 12 municipalities in the region of Niagara. And they upped it to 2. And I'm just wondering, and Councilor Riley brought up the fact that they were hiring more staff. Do you have a count now that how many cruisers are in West Lincoln as compared to what we had in the past? Is it still 2? Are we up to 3 now? Or
well, in 2019, the service undertook a comprehensive managing patrol performance study. And as a result of that study, we look at a number of factors, and it's not necessarily the geographical area itself. We determine our response time to the calls for service, and it allows us to set a standard so which we can accurately and quickly, reliably track changes or trends in workload in short and long term. And it allows us to inform our deployment decisions. So we do that regularly. The last one was in 2019. And based on that, there was no need to increase the staffing in 8th District at that time.
Okay, the reason I asked, it's not so much as you mentioned the criminal activity in West Lincoln, a lot of it's gone down, thank goodness. But the other thing is, on a serious accident, let's say, and the cruisers are in Victoria Avenue, and it's in Fulton, you're 20 minutes away. It's just such a huge area, and to be strategically located, so that if something comes up, there is a cruiser within a reasonable period of time, creates kind of a concern for us out in the country, because of the fact that we're so far away from everything. And a call is usually sometimes half an hour to 45 minutes, depending, I guess, on the severity which you judge at the time. But it's just more comforting if we know that there's somebody closer.
Right, for sure. I totally understand that. And as I indicated, I think the Councillor Riley is that we have a standard to meet in terms of our response to priority calls. And we are well within that standard of 10 minutes. Sometimes I understand, I've responded to calls out in West Lincoln, and I understand that, but just the practicality of having an officer out there in the event there's an accident or a collision, we do make it work, and we make officers available, and they are out there and they are responding as fast as they can to those incidents.
All right, thank you. Through you to the mayor, I wonder if there's any possibility that we could go back. I know this is coming up to the end of this term of council, but I think it's very interesting, rewarding for both the police services and for the councilors who represent the people out here in West Lincoln, that we can have these meetings more frequently, that, you know, thoughts and ideas or things that are happening or occurring in our area can be brought to the attention, and anything new coming up, the police services can let us know also. Just good two-way communication. I really enjoyed it when it was under Mayor Katie Trombetta, but since then it hasn't had the focus that I felt it was needed. And it's certainly because of the rural area we live in. It is an important factor, because time is always the factor every time you make a call. How long, where are they? And we have to wait.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Councilor Rayner. And Councilor Riley, you said you had another question.
I did. So I'm going to go through you to Jen Lawson, actually. I think either Jen or the police chief. So the question I have, and I'm thinking really far term, or far way out, but I'm just kind of curious if there's been talk. Has there been talks about where the next future police station detachment's going to be? And if so, whereabouts would that be? Is there any chance that that could be somewhere between Pelham, West Lincoln, and Lincoln? You know, I feel like with all the acreage that we have, you know, if we find some center hub and the, you know, unprecedented amount of growth our community is going through and all of our neighboring communities go through, you certainly got to be looking at expansion. So I'm just kind of curious to you, Mr. Mayor, to either Jennifer or the police chief, if that has come up, and if so, could they shed any light on that?
Thank you. I'll let Chief McCullough talk about that. I'm not sure exactly what else is there. I know we've just built a couple of new detachments, so I'm not quite sure when people are going to have an appetite to spend more money on another detachment right now.
Thanks, Jen, and I will advise through the mayor that at this particular time, there's not any focus on building another detachment. We continue to look at our workload study. We have those built-in time factors that Staff Sergeant Sean Perrant spoke about in terms of trying to ensure that we're adhering to the 10 minutes for priority calls. We will continue to, again, monitor the population growth. It's certainly not unique to West Lincoln, but it's happening all across the region, and you know, we certainly will be keeping an eye on that and be making requests to our board for additional resources. All of our districts have the capacity to increase the number of officers. We're not at a stalemate, if you will, in terms of not being able to add officers because we've outgrown our facilities. So I guess short answer is there are no current plans to build any additional districts. They were all built for future growth expansion.
Okay, thank you. And I just mentioned, like, as our growth perspective goes to at least 2041 or 2051, we're going to be more than double what we are now. So hopefully, you know, somewhere down the road, you take away from the fact that we still have land available and you want to kind of get that land while you can. So I hope that could be some kind of conversation that can take place with the police board in the not too distant future, even if it's not an immediate thing, but somewhere part of your long-term capital plan, because I think West Lincoln would be an excellent host for it. And I think we kind of, the far right side of our community can really help harbor between Lincoln and Pelham. So I just really wanted to put that idea out there, see if there's anything in the works. Clearly there isn't. Hopefully that doesn't mean there never is. And again, thank you everyone for coming tonight.
Okay, I see Constable Perrant, or no, it would be Sergeant Perrant, District Sergeant Perrant.
Thank you. Just want to follow up on a couple of things. Our website is www.nrps.ca, not .com as I initially indicated. And with respect to Councillor Rayner's comment about additional meetings, I agree with that, but also my door is always open. Councillor Witteveen and CAO have always reached out to me with issues. And like they indicated, I'm addressing them all the time. I have an open door policy, whether it's call, text, email. Feel free to reach out to me anytime you need and we'll get the matters resolved. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a formal setting like this.
Great, thank you. Any others? I have a few questions yet. If I could. Oh, Councilor Broderick, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to perhaps the staff sergeant, Councillor Trumbetta had, I'm just going to piggyback on his comments about road safety and just highlight the necessity of the ride programs to ensure the safety of our roads as well. If the staff sergeant could perhaps speak about some of the past ride programs that have taken place in West Lincoln and perhaps some plans for the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, we have conducted RIDE in conjunction with our traffic enforcement unit. We have the availability to set up RIDE in 8 District itself. In our garage, we have the portable RIDE stands to alert people that we're going to be conducting a RIDE campaign and all the appropriate signage in order to legally conduct a RIDE campaign. So we do it on the holidays, the typical holidays that you would see us out there, or through our social media campaign. But at the same time, we'll also do it on a random night in the summer, just to do a pop-up ride, so to speak, when our staffing and call volume permit. And you'll have a platoon of officers that'll go out there and they'll do a community initiative and set up a ride campaign.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And any others? I have a question then. Chief, this is for the chief. I was part of the discussions in regional, at the regional level, as was Regional Councillor Witteveen, when we added, the 44 new boots on the ground, so to speak, frontline constables. I have, with the onset of COVID and what we've seen happen in the last year with respect to vaccine policies and such. I understand that there are many, I don't know exactly the number, but there are many frontline officers on the force who are on a leave of absence or they've been terminated. Is that, can you verify, assure us that that's been compensated for?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, complete urban myth and urban legend. We have not terminated anybody.
Okay. But there are some that are they're suspended without pay.
Also, complete urban legend. We do not have any officers that are suspended as a result of our vaccination policy.
Okay. All right. I was having a beer with a couple of them on Friday night, so I'll check with them.
I can give you the most accurate information. And
yeah, that's why I asked.
The answer is no, we don't have any that are suspended.
I was made aware of I guess there was a chief of police convention last week. Is that correct?
There was a Police Association of Ontario conference last week.
Yeah, the OACP or something. I believe I was made aware of a particular sessions in that where lawyers from the Toronto Police that represent the Toronto Police Services were talking about some of the concerns about members that have been suspended. I don't know if you attended that session, but I'm glad to hear that there's no suspended members of our NRP service due to the vaccine policy. And I think, dispelling urban legend or urban myth is always important, and that's why we have these opportunities also to ask, because I certainly get my inbox full of all kinds of questions with respect to that. So thank you for your answer on that. Anyone else? We have one last stab, hopefully not for the end of the term, although it's likely that the next time we all meet together like this will be a new term of council. But anyway, as our staff surgeon has said, their door is always open and the phone is only an arm's length away. So are there any final questions? Then with that, thank you so much, all you members. It was actually overwhelming for us. You filled our screen more than we do and so it was really good to have you all here. It shows that we're important to you to have this kind of representation here, and we will continue to work through and with our own Sean Perrant from District 8 And thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can I just advise Staff Sergeant Sean Perrant will be getting promoted as of May 1st to inspector. You will be getting Staff Sergeant
We get Don back?
Chris Lemich is
Okay.
who your new staff sergeant or district commander will be.
Okay.
And we will ensure that there are appropriate introductions. And I know that Chris will definitely carry on and pick up the torch exactly the same as Sean has. So.
Well, then thank you so much, Sean, for being our man in District 8 for these probably about a little bit shy of 2 years. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, okay,
Pleasure.
great. So when
Mayor.
Chris comes on, then we'll be sure to have him come to our the next available council meeting once he's settled in, and then we can make introductions.
That's
Great.
exactly what I was going to ask, Mr. Mayor. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Okay, thank you all, and we're going to move on.
Thank you.
Okay. So at this time we have regional council remarks. So I'm going to call upon our own Albert Whitting. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Okay, just give them a minute there to vacate, I guess. So good evening, Mayor, members of council, staff, members, and public. So this evening, I'd just like to start by highlighting some of the region's committee activities this past month. So at our Public Works meeting, we had the Transportation Services Division present the updated information on the Municipal 511, which gives travelers updated information on road closures, detours, constructions, flood, traffic, and other road details here in Niagara. So this is a pilot project that's going into its second year, and this system provides the opportunity to have all the relevant information for travelers in one place. So a bit of statistics: the Niagara region maintains 762 kilometers of roads and 133 bridges, 92 culverts, and 283 traffic signals. So these are fundamental components of the transportation system, and when they're not available due to planned or unplanned events, our residents are affected. So you can put that on, check that out in the morning before you go out. Secondly, the region has renewed its specialized transit service agreement with our existing service provider. Service agreement operates from January to December, and this time frame aligns with the establishment of the new Transit Commission, which will assume the operational responsibility on January 1st, 2023. A report that I extracted out of the Waste Management Steering Committee that would be of interest to Council was the 2021 illegal dumping summary. So within the entire region, there were a total of 748 illegal dumping reports that were received. 144 were found through regional staff proactive monitoring. 9 were reported through Crime Stoppers. 11 were reported by local area municipal staff. And 444 were received by the Waste Info line. And 140 were received via online reporting tool. And 60 warning letters were issued, and 12 provincial offenses notices were issued as a result of dumping. So extracted out of that, as for West Lincoln summary, there were actually 21 investigations throughout the year. And the report did not go into detail on the type of reporting per municipality, but if councillors choose, I could ask our director to dig into those if you wanted to know what those 21 were. Later that day, we had our Public Health and Social Services. We had a presentation by Elizabeth Zimmerman, the director of YMCA Niagara Region. She explained the work being done by the Y to, this was on human trafficking, to help victims that wanted to break out of this cycle. And so the Y has a 6-bed home to support survivors in their unique needs. From 2020 2020 to 2021. After our first year of operation, 18 women came into the program and 23 were turned away. And this shows that the need is great for this program. And further discussion through the meeting was to see how we could lobby for greater support in this area of social service, as Niagara region is a hot spot for human trafficking. Secondly, we received a report on childcare in early years, force funding and plan for Niagara, the investment from the province, translated into $3.6 million for 2 years, 2.9 for 2022, and approximately 730 for 2023. The funding will be invested for two components. First, to develop a professional learning to retain support and recognize the existing childcare and early year workforce, and second, to development of innovative recruitment and retention strategies to recruit new members, individuals into the profession. Because this funding is one time, it will, the Child Services will develop and implement initiatives that will be sustainable beyond the funding period. And as I was writing this, my report said I put down no news as to date whether our provincial government has signed a childcare agreement with the federal government to assist in making childcare affordable to working families. And as I kind of was watching some news feeds today, that the province has signed a deal today with the federal government on early years and childcare. And I received or maybe Madam CAO could share with other councillors. I know Councillor Broderick is interested in more of the details and particulars of the release, of the news release. So if you could, I have that shared by a third party, but I would prefer that I not share a third party's information on that. So Madam CAO, if you could find the details and or share the link, that would be much appreciated. So at our planning meeting this month, we were also presented with a 10-year economic development strategy that the region is working on, and extensive stakeholders engagement had taken place since last September, and the work plan strategy is near completion, and by June the entire plan will be completed and ready to be put into action, which I believe it is good for West Lincoln, because there's now a strategy in place, and that will help us work with the region in helping us find that economic development that we look to. Planning also presented to us the settlement area boundary recommendations that are into the official plan, and much of that discussion took place on how we manage the growth areas and balance it. So what was interesting was the province has put out a report on the earlier this year on the Ontario Housing Affordability Task Force, and I encourage all councillors to search that out and read that report, because that is a guiding principle that the region is using, and I'm sure that as you move forward in further planning here in the municipality, that will also be a guiding document. So, and other than that, councillors, this is my report for March, and any members have any questions on my report, I will gladly answer them for you.
Great, thanks so much, Councillor. Any questions for Councillor Woodamine? I see none, so it looks like we're going to let you off easy this week, this month, sir. And thank you. I can't express my gratitude for the fact that you give a thorough, and it actually helps refresh my memory too. So I appreciate it, and it's great that we have two heads in that council. I think you would echo the same. The ability to split the load and for our municipality was a good advantage over this term over last and all previous. So thank you, sir. We're going to move on to 9, confirmation of minutes, and I have Councillor Bradrick with this resolution.
Yes, sir. Moved by myself, Shelley Bradrick, that the minutes of the February 28th, 2022 regular council meeting be accepted.
And can I get a seconder? I have Councillor Jonker. Thank you. And any comments or questions? I see none, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving right along. Let me back up here. We have public meetings under the Planning Act. On March 21st, Councillor Ganan, you have the first one there.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself that the minutes of the public meeting held on March 21st, 2022, under Section 34 of the Planning Act, with respect to A, zoning bylaw amendment 6882 Vaughan Road, Stevenson and Givens, file number 1601-001-22. B, zoning bylaw amendment Silverdale Sports Center, file number 1601-019-19. C, zoning bylaw amendment 2723 South Grimsby Road, Boverhoff, file number 1601-004-2022. And there's nothing else, so I would imagine it should say be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Ganan. And can I get a seconder, please? And I saw Councillor Trombetta. So are there any comments or questions on these public meetings? Councillor Rayner, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Treble. With regards to number A or letter A and letter B was quite intensive. It resulted in a violation of a number of things, I believe. If it was wetlands, it was Ministry of Natural Resources, it was the region, Conservation Authority. There was a whole bunch of things that were kind of caught that weren't done appropriately. Is there anything in our bylaws with regards to, because this was a night of a lot of people asking for forgiveness. Is there any penalties or anything under the township guidelines? Because
so unfortunately, for Councillor Rayner, you did leave the meeting a little bit earlier because Director Treble did in fact address that. So I'm going to let him speak again and answer just for you this time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that.
Good. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Rayner. The challenge within the planning world is that people have a right to make an application, notwithstanding the way the application might land on our desk. And it is our responsibility to ensure that we undertake a fair and thorough review and compare against policies and regulations and give recommendations based on almost as if the application did not exist, what it would be like if it was to be supported in the first instance. So unfortunately, from a planning point of view, the fact that they are asking for forgiveness isn't really a planning rationale and therefore not part of the evaluation staff must undertake.
So it's a provincial thing.
So what I'm saying then is that it doesn't create any precedent or penalty in the future for people to try your best to get away with as much as you can and cross your fingers you don't get caught, because even if you get caught, it ain't gonna matter. So what the heck, give it a try. I don't really think that's the way you want to do it.
It has to be within the realm of planning. So yes, you're correct, Councillor Rayner. But I think that the director did answer it now twice for us, and the answer is yep. There's no penalty that we can enforce, other than we follow the planning as if it was coming to us for the very first time through the proper means. I know. Anyways, we've been on this for 7 years together, Councillor Rayner. We've seen this a number of times, as you have.
Well, I've been on it for 15, Mr. Mayor, so I've seen it a heck of a lot more than you have. And,
correct.
And you just wonder, you're hoping one day that it stops and then everybody follows the rules, because the penalty for not following the rules is greater than what you're trying to sneak through. Therefore, you're not going to do it. But there isn't, which opens a door wide open to do whatever the hell you want. Good luck. You don't get caught.
I might add, though, and Director would correct me if I'm wrong, but to proceed without a permit actually costs you double the permit. Is that not correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a double permit fee. That's correct, and there is a penalty fee within the planning world as well. But neither one of them are a real disincentive, if truth be told. So.
Just saying. Okay, Councillor Jonker, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk. I don't know, like, my internet's in and out, but it's we're at 9.2, right? And it just shows on the
No,
east
we're on
track.
we're on 9.1, and we had some questions about A and C. 9.1.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question on 9.1. The Councillor Ganan moved, and I believe it was seconded by.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, it is
Mr. Mayor,
it
it's
is 9.2.
It's 9.2.
Oh, okay. Maybe my numbering is on. It's the one moved by Councillor Ganan.
Right.
That's 9.2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize. I have two copies here, and so I'm going off the one that gives me kind of the script. So if you'll just bear with me, I'll go with your numbering. It is the one that has the zoning. It's the public meetings, the first set. Go ahead, Councillor Jonker.
Yeah, it's showing me as seconded, but I think it was Councillor Trombetta that you said seconded.
Okay.
Through you to the clerk.
The clerk will correct me on that point as well. Madam Clerk, it was seconded, correct?
There we go. Perfect.
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam.
All right. So it's moved and seconded. Any more comments or questions? All right. Then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Then moving right along, we have the building and permit fees resolution. Councillor Jonker, you have that resolution.
Yes, I do. Correct. Moved by myself that the minutes of a public meeting held on March 21st, 2022 under the Ontario Building Code Act relating to amendments to the township's building bylaws, increased building fees be accepted.
All right. And can I get a seconder for that one? And I got Councillor Riley. Thank you. And are there any comments or questions? I see none, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? And I believe that's carried. Thank you very much. There are no communications this evening, so I'm going to provide a couple of brief comments into the record for this particular meeting. I was pleased to join Councillors Rayner and Councillor Trombetta at the Abingdon Hall. Well, I refer to it as Abingdon Hall, but it's actually the Caister Centre Hall, but it's in Abingdon, the little hamlet or village of Abingdon, for a SWIFT announcement. And SWIFT is the program basically put forward by governments, and there's multiple levels of governments to make internet more readily available in the rural and in the countryside. And so the announcement was made that some 6 hamlets, Kimbo, Caister, Abingdon, they were all going to get fiber. I believe the provider was Cogeco, and Councillor Trombetta will correct me if I'm wrong, he was there, or Councillor Rayner, is the main provider, but because the lines themselves are deregistered, once it's in place, you can basically have the full range of internet providers on that fiber line. So this is good news. It's the second time in this term that we've received monies and funding towards rural internet, and I think that this is a good day because given the age that we're in, but also with the complexities of working from home, which has dramatically increased, this is welcome news. So it's good for our municipality, and I was thankful that Councillors Trombetta and Rayner were able to join me and our MP Sam Oosterhoff, as well as the director, Rob Foster from the region, who's on the SWIFT board, and to join us as well. Just to bring everyone up to speed, and congratulations this morning. There was a It was a family affair, but Highland Packers did a ribbon cutting. I did find out about it, so I'd like to highlight that Highland Packers is a welcome addition to our municipality in terms of an employer, and we look forward to watching their structure grow and eventually forming a partnership with them in our community to make sure that we're a balanced community, that we have our own engine, as well as their civic contributions to our municipality. So that's Highland Packers ribbon cutting, and it was in our industrial park for their, I understand it to be a sausage factory. So that's really good. And those are the conclusion of my comments since last week. And then we're going to move on. So I have 12 report of committee. Councillor Trombetta, you have the resolution for admin, fire, finance, March 14.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself that the minutes of the March 14th, 2022 Administration Fire Finance Committee meeting be accepted and the recommendations contained therein be approved with the exception of, and I don't see any, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, can I get a seconder, please? And I have Councillor Jonker again. So I'm going to ask, are there any comments or questions? I see none, so I'm going to call the question. Are all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Moving right along, we have planning, building, environmental. Councillor Riley, you have that resolution?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do. So I guess moved by myself that the minutes of the open session portion of the March 21st, 2022 Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting be accepted, and that the recommendations contained therein be approved with the following exceptions, and there's currently none. And that the confidential minutes relating to the closed session portion of the March 21st, 2022 Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting be accepted, and that the minutes remain confidential and restricted from public disclosure in accordance with Section 239 of the Municipal Act.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I get a seconder for that? And I got Councillor Ganan. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? I see none, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And any opposed? And that is carried. Thank you very much. There was no Public Works Rec or Arena Committee meeting this cycle. So we're going to move on, and I have other business. So from under other business, I have it as 15.1. It was an item that was deferred from the March 21st Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting from last week. I'm going to ask, maybe we'll go to the, you know what? Let's have a little fun here. Councillor Rayner, you have the resolution. Go ahead.
This is not fun. What are you going to have fun with?
Well, I was going to go to the director and ask for an update, but we really don't have a motion on the floor that we can actually have an update on. So now we'll put it on the floor, the resolution. We'll get a seconder. We'll have a discussion. And if it's defeated, or if it's some other action, or if it's approved, some other action might take place, and we'll just go through the whole motions. But I think the easiest thing is to just plunge ahead as we had planned. So, Councillor Rayner, you have a resolution. If you could just read it for me.
I move by myself that recommendation report PD 36 2022 relating to Smithville landowners group request for support of Minister's zoning order MZ0 dated March 21st, 2022 be received, and that the Township Committee and Council hereby requests or does not request that the Minister of Municipal Affairs issues a Minister's zoning order, an MZ0, in a form as found at attachment 3 to this report, as a response to the request from the landowners group dated the 31st of January 2022. And 3, that should support be granted in clause 2 above. Such support is conditional on all landowners inside the approved MZ0 area comply with all terms and conditions of future subdivision, condominium, and site plan approvals, including details on compliance with all master servicing plans, and secondary plans of the Township of West Lincoln, and financial obligations, including front-ending agreements as required. An agreement to this effect is to be prepared and signed by the end of June 2022. In the alternative, should an MZ0 not be supported in Clause 2 above, such standard conditions shall continue to apply in the normal course of planning approvals. And 4, should an MZ0 be approved by the minister, but the developers and landowners fail to agree to normal planning procedures going forward, then the council will reserve the right to request that the MZ0, if approved, be repealed.
Thank you so much. And you robbed that of all the fun that it had as a.
Well, I thought it was, I had to take my shot when I had my chance.
Okay, can I get a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Jonker. So it's properly before us, but I'm going to go to our Director of Planning first for a bit of an update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Rayner never fails. The report that's before us as committee or council will recall from committee is on the table because of the fact that the landowners group asked for us to consider the request for a minister's zoning order. The flavor at committee was that we should perhaps see what happens at the region with respect to the 2 key reports that they had on the agenda last Thursday. And as Councillor Woodavine has already identified, and Councillor Bilsma, I know you were there as well. PDS 6, I believe it was, and PDS 7 were both supported at committee level. And that was the reason for this report being referred to council, was so that we would have a sense of what actually happened at regional committee. There is a sense now, Mr. Mayor, that it may be appropriate just to sort of set the report aside for the time being and monitor what's happening at the region and determine at a later date if this report should be considered again. And I think that would be something called tabling. So that's a possibility that staff and I know the general manager of the landowners group would support if that was something that committee or council considered tonight.
And thank you, Mr. Director, for offering that term tabling, because I think we should just kind of keep that in our back pocket. The landowners have gone through the effort of asking us, and so long as we are able to work with the region, and I might just say, and that was the discussion that we had last week, as long as the region is willing and able to advance this, we're pleased. And I know that a lot of work has gone in, both from our side, but also from the regional side. And there's a special bond that's formed with respect to planning practices. This could be a bit of a high water mark or a poster of good working relationship. So I'm glad you raised that issue. I'm going to go to Councillor Riley. He has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was just going to bring the motion forward that this be tabled to either next term or when staff feels appropriate to bring this back to council.
Great, thank you. Can I get a seconder for tabling? Councillor Trombetta, thank you so much. Any discussion on the tabling of this? Was that Councillor Ganan's hand? No, okay.
Well, I did have my hand up, Mr. Mayor, but I'm not certain about the appropriateness of what I wanted to ask. I actually had a question for our director before it got to the motion about tabling, just in terms of the timing and the appropriateness for the landowners group. So if I could ask that and delay the tabling for a split second, I think we need, the landowners group came to us in January with a request and we put it off. And then we put it off again, and because we needed more information, and appropriately so, we needed to have a further report so that we knew what we were dealing with. So I'm not questioning any of that. I'm just saying that now that we are at the end of March, and there's a possibility that the writ will come down early in May for the election, I just wonder if the landowners group are aware of the timing through you, Mr. Treble, and are okay with this tabling issue. I know that you indicated they were, but you know, the timing has marched on from when they first asked. And I just want to be sure that we aren't treading on the toes of the people who've also been working with us, not only with the region end, but actually the other end, the landowners group as well. So thank you
so much for that question, Councillor Gannon. It's an important one. Go ahead, sir.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can certainly answer part of it, but probably not complete. I have been speaking with the general manager of the landowners group, and he certainly understands the benefit of the concept of tabling, simply from the point of view of the fact that it does not kill the report. It gives us opportunity to revisit the need at any point in the future. And in discussions with the Commissioner of Planning, she identified that there are, you know, definitely at least two more steps along the way at the regional level where, you know, if something falls off the rails, it might be appropriate to dust off this report and push it forward. One is April 28th is the public meeting the region is holding to give consideration to things like the urban boundary. And it's a public commenting period that gives opportunity for all sorts of ratepayers and agencies and other interested parties to influence the process. And then, of course, in June, there will be the final recommendation report that will go before Regional Council to put the report on the minister's desk at Queen's Park. So those two steps were two key ones that Michelle Sergi, the commissioner, identified as opportunities where, if, you know, something isn't going right, the opportunity to put the MZO on the table is appropriate. In terms of the timing around the writ, the general manager of the landowners group doesn't seem to be that worried about that right now. I don't know what he knows that I don't know, but I'm sure if you talk to the individual landowners, they might very well have a slightly different opinion. But I think the general manager's opinion basically is, as long as you don't kill the report in tonight's vote, it's a win-win for everybody. You know, it allows us to proceed with the relationship we have with the region to do good planning and finish the process in a good planning manner. But should something start to go off the rails, we have a backup in our back pocket, so to speak. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, Councillor Gannon, but that's kind of where I can get you to right now.
Well, and I appreciate that. Thank you. So I would just question then the tabling and the timing of the tabling. If you need to be able to pull it back sooner, it doesn't need to be tabled to the next term of council, I don't think. I think we need to make sure that it's just tabled to a further date, or just no date at all, but tabled until necessary, or whatever that wording. I'm sure the clerk has a better idea of what that wording should be to ensure that we're laying it aside, but making sure that it's available if we need it. And so I found that a little worrisome to think about the next term of council when it may be that, you know, it needs to be in place sooner than that. Thank you.
So, Councillor Gannon, if I could answer that from Bernu's perspective, deferral and referral have certain meanings. They're usually to a particular, usually either sent back for more work, or they are pushed off to a particular meeting. But tabling basically puts it in a holding pattern, and that's why you don't have to table to any particular time. You basically put it on the table and it stays there indefinitely.
Okay.
And it's
then I'm absolutely fine with that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I just was concerned about setting a particular time and saying we'll table it until when we don't know about when it might be needed. So that's fine. Thank you very much.
Great, and hopefully that's clear enough for everyone. Go ahead, Director. I saw your finger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing that Joanne can maybe enlighten us on. In discussions with her today, I know there was a question about whether we can table it to Planning Committee, which would be kind of the ideal place to put it back to, if possible.
The only simple challenge that I have is we've every time it's going to come up, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion as it gets pushed down the road, because then we're going to defer it. Tabling allows us to just, leave it in abeyance until such time that we can grab it and use it. And again, this is just for everyone. I'm just going to make this comment. The region is willing to work with us. The landowners are willing to work with us. And if things proceed smoothly, there will be no problems. So we're looking for hiccups. We didn't have a hiccup on Thursday. It actually passed with quite a resounding approval, which was good. I mean, it passed in its normal sort of way, and we hope that that continues. I will say that the region is under the gun in a general sense for their official plan. It does have a deadline and it needs to be completed. So they're under the gun more than we are. So one way or the other, this will all be resolved by June. So, I did see the clerk, or she's on our screen now. So that usually means she has something important to tell us. So go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know how important it is, but just responding through you to Brian's question about the table. So I did look it up in the procedural bylaw. The item has to be tabled and stays on council agenda per section 7.6 of the procedural bylaw. I also, just to bring some wording in to clarify some Councillor Ganan's concerns. So I have that recommendation contained in report PD 36/2022, Smithville Landowners Group requests for support of Minister's zoning order MZO be tabled until staff feels it appropriate for council to lift and deal with this matter.
Great, thank you so much. And can I just get the seconder then for that?
It was moved by Councillor Riley and seconded by Councillor Trombetta.
Okay, great. So that it's properly before us. You've got the wording on it. I actually, that refreshes my memory because we had something tabled from the discussions around the community center, and it was always up on our agenda for weeks and weeks and weeks until we resolved that. So that is a bit of a refresher. Go ahead, Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what I said originally, I don't think really changes that much because all I said was I mentioned the next to be council or until that staff deem it appropriate to bring back. So I just know there was mention there, a concern that we were pushing off there, but originally I specifically said or when staff feel it's necessary to bring back. So I just want to clear that confusion because that was not the original motion. No. So I don't know where that idea came from, but I just thought I would make that noted. But I like what Joanne wrote more concisely. I think that is probably a much better resolution than what we just kind of made up on the spot. But again, I just felt that there was that misunderstanding that we were just going to pass the buck here, and it was really just to keep it on the table. But I do appreciate the explanation of the tabling. But again, the whole idea was just when staff feel it's necessary to make a decision on it, they would just bring it back at that point in time.
Yeah. So now we're all clear what tabling is. We don't use it too often. Once last term, and it looks like it's going to be the first time this term if this passes. So Councillor Jonker, go ahead. Councillor Jonker, go ahead.
Yeah, just have to unmute. So just with what, through you, Mr. Mayor, to what our clerk just read, she said until staff feels it needs to come back, but should it also be, because this is a request from the Smithville Landowners Group, would they have the ability to bring it back as well? It kind of is the question I'm asking, because it is a request from them. So would they be able to as well say, hey, we want to have this discussion and get this figured out, or is it just going to be left up to staff?
A good question. I'm going to go to our director.
I guess I have two thoughts, but I see Joanne has joined as well. The first is that, I'm in regular contact with the general manager of the landowners group, so I can certainly convey on their behalf a concern and, bring it forward. Likewise, you guys will know what's going on at the region, or at least the mayor and the regional councillor will know what's going on at the region. Should there be something happen there that causes concern as well, I'm thinking any of us could probably raise it at a planning committee meeting and make sure the next council meeting is the appropriate place to put the agenda item on the table. The second option, of course, is that planning committee certainly is an opportunity for the landowners to come speak to council or committee again as well, should they have concern, and then it could get raised at committee level. So I'm not too concerned about the wording myself because I'm in close contact with the landowners group, but that's my thought anyway.
Okay, is that good, Councillor? Yeah, okay. Okay, and then so it's we have the motion. It was it's a motion to table. Are there any further discussion? Then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? And that carries. Thank you very much. Let me back up here for a second. And so that we're on to, my number is 15-2, if that's correct. This is just a memo on renewal number 2 of the bylaw to remove part lot control from block 47. It's just for information. There's no motion. So I'm going to go to members of council. Do you have any new remarks that have not already been stated? New remarks. Go ahead, Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just thought I would give a brief update on the 50 million tree campaign that this council endorsed support earlier last year. So today, myself as well as some planning staff was able to meet up with Christian Smithville Christian High School. They're kind of front-ending or taking lead on this with Land Care Niagara. So we were able to go and visit the site today, and and they're planning to do, I think it's about early spring. They're hoping to get the trees by mid-April, and so if they can get stuff between mid-April to end of April, they're hoping to kind of be in right away if they can. And so they're going to try and prioritize West Lincoln, specifically because actually the students are involved and they really want them to be part of the whole process. And it's going to be quite a production there, I guess, in terms of planting 1,500 trees. So we have something to look forward to this spring as we do some reforestation in that area, that allocated area. As well, I don't really have too much more to say other than I want to congratulate, at least from this spot here, Team Canada for moving on to the World Cup. I believe it's been since it was in 1986. I would have been 3 years old. So to date myself a little, this is the last time Team Canada was in there. And I thought that was some pretty exciting news that came out of the other day there to see them and follow them all along. So I thought that was worthwhile. And then last, I was just going to mention that a couple of the fellow councillors and I are going to be doing a community Zoom chat, a week this Monday for the community that's able to come out and ask us questions and in any other form that they can to kind of get answers. As we hear all the time, usually they go to social media and they tag us or they call us. So this is just one extra step we're trying to do to make ourselves more accessible to the community. So hopefully some people are able to see that, and that's available through social media as well. And other than that, that's all I have to report tonight, sir.
Good, thank you. Any others? Councillor Gannan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few, actually. Last week, March 22nd to 24th, myself and 2 other members of the Age-Friendly Advisory Committee, of which we'd heard nothing in the last little while because we haven't been able to meet, but Linda Sevier, who's a co-chair, and also Sue Langdon and I, took part in the Age-Friendly Advisory Committee Inspiring Inclusive Communities, which was a conference. Mostly it was mornings with several workshops. The overarching theme for many sessions is that age friendliness is associated with the quality of life, and that issue relates to aging in place. So there will be lots more coming forward. This is an Ontario-wide conference, and so many more things will be ongoing once we're back up and running with our age-friendly committee. The goal is aiming to have a community that supports inclusive programs and services, systemic inclusion and visibility, a community that's diverse and intergenerational and encompassing and compassionate. And on the compassionate end, I also, this past week on Wednesday, spent my noon hour taking Councillor Riley's place and riding along on the Meals for Wheels program. I really witnessed that compassionate action in person in the terms of watching people have not only warm meals, cold meals that need to be warmed up, but meals that were nourishing for them delivered, but also watching the interaction between the visitor. It was just to get a healthy meal and a friendly visit, I think really showed a lot of that compassion moving forward. So that was a wonderful thing to be part of. And so I was kind of glad that Councillor Riley couldn't do it. He was doing it in place of the mayor. I did it in place of him. But anyway, it worked out very well. And it sort of fit in with how I'd spent the earlier part of my morning. That same evening, I took part in the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Community Council meeting, and it was affirmed there loudly and clearly that active negotiations with each group in the consortium of Ellis Don are taking place, and all aspects of the commercial and financial close are to be completed by April 29th. And there's hope that there'll be some kind of a celebration ongoing, even if it turns out to be a local one. The timing is a little tricky, but everybody's working on that. So. The Kiwanis AGM, wearing another hat, is tomorrow night, but I thought that it would be interesting to inform you that in spite of COVID, that limited fundraising. The bingo that Kiwanis is able to do via Kojiko or Your TV in conjunction with St. Catherine's meant that Kiwanis in their last calendar year was able to give $5,000 to various groups in our community. $2,000 went to Fort in 2 different allocations. 4-H received $1,500, Jillian's Place $500, and the Community Care Toonies for Toys $1,000. So all of that came from pretty much from people who are playing bingo on TV or coming out to the Legion on the time that it's open. So as well, so far this year, they've also given another $1,900 towards the seniors dinner and another $100 for Fort. So all good stuff. And further to the Kiwanis issue, I want to point out that there are 2 farm fundraisers coming up. One is the Farmers Easter Market, which they're doing in conjunction, of course, with the township. But we are having a bake table, so please come out and support your local Kiwanis Club. All money raised in Smithville stays in Smithville, and that's one of the benefits of Kiwanis, I think. And as well, April 23rd is a bottle and beer and cooler can drive Saturday morning, and they're doing 3 locations. The Abingdon Hall, there'll be a truck and people collecting there for people who live out that way. The same at the Wellandport Hall in the library area. Again, just a truck and some volunteers collecting. And Smithville Garage in town in Smithville is also providing a location for that day. And finally, one other piece of good news. Tomorrow morning, the Chamber of Commerce is returning to an in-person Wake Up with West Lincoln breakfast for business and their partners at 7:30 at Smithville Legion tomorrow. So that's also a good sign of things to come. Not only fundraisers, but also some community gatherings. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor, and for all those updates. And I'm especially glad that you enjoyed the Meals on Wheels. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, actually, I wanted to thank Councillor Ganane. I didn't know who actually was able to fill in for that. It was kind of last minute. I know I was covering for you originally, and then Councillor Ganane had to cover for me. So I do appreciate you being able to accommodate that so quickly. That was certainly last minute. So I do apologize for that. Something had come up. So thank you.
Good. Thank you. And any other comments or questions by for members of council on any information? Then moving on, and new items of business. I can't believe I'm so tongue-tied already, but I think I just need my coffee. Mayor, is there any new items of business that required immediate direction? I see none. So then I'm going to move on to bylaws. Councillor Ryler. Look at there we go again. Councillor Riley.
No worries, Mr. Mayor. All right, so bylaws. So moved by myself that leave be granted to introduce bylaws 2022-21, 2022-22, 2022-23, and 2022-24, and that the same shall be considered to have been read a first, second, and third with 1 reading, and are hereby adopted, and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign the affixed seal corporate seal thereto, any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding.
Great, thank you for that. And can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Bradrick, thank you. And any comments or questions? I see none, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. So we move on to, there are no confidential matters, so I would declare this meeting adjourned at the hour of 8:37. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good night.